we can like fight. The Founding Fathers said if it ever comes to this, we have to fight and take it back, literally. But, I mean, that's kind of a radical thinking. You can't like just say, let's all fight, because they also have everything set up in a way that they could just say martial law. They could just go to war with somebody and declare martial law and pretty much like, they have tons of things set up where they could pretty much eradicate any little people like us. So we basically have to form an army, basically, an army of conscious people. So I think groups like this are good. Maybe connect them through the internet. Maybe like, the internet's a good tool, but it has to be like real. You can't have any groups running it. It has to be by the people, for the people. How the nation is set up, you know? So, yeah, please, I like people talking. I don't want to talk all the time. If anyone has anything to bring to the table, bring it.
Well, one thing, I don't remember where I was reading this, but I've been reading a lot since our last discussion about fascism, and one thing that I read was that maybe fascism hasn't fully happened yet because the movement against it has not fully happened yet. And and I think that's part of what we're seeing when we see that National Defense Act is a response to the movement against fascism, which Occupy is part of the movement against fascism, whether we realize it or not. And so I guess it just scares me because I feel like on the one hand, it's such an exciting time right now. People are out here and moving, but at the same time, the government, the state, backed by the corporations, has so much more power than
that's what it comes down
they
to.
can crush us right now. So then the question is, how do we proceed, you know? How do we proceed to develop the kind of consciousness that is necessary on a mass level to really get on the right track?
Well, I think one of the most important things you can do is something like this, man. Put a word out in the media, because
Yeah, like
a lot in the internet they are part of this.
Alternative media, independent media.
Yeah, I'd like to see sort of central hubs of all the occupies around the world share information so we can pass it back and forth, because there's a lot of really cool flash mobs and stuff going on that, and instead of fighting against police, we can use their tactics or other people's tactics to play kind of prank games that are funny, but nothing that's going to mess with traffic or anything like that, and educating the police too. Sorry.
The thing that I think we need to think about, though, is the legislation that's going through that's creating an infrastructure for a takeover of the internet, and that the companies that have created the technology for other takeovers in other parts of the world are based in the US. So this is a very real kind of threat, and I think that one of the most profound things that I've taken away from the Occupy movement is how much it is about not only the internet. I think the internet has been crucial, no question, but also face-to-face interactions, getting to know people personally, socializing with them, engaging with them in conversation. Because, I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, but who knows the situation in a few months, in a few years, and the infrastructure is there.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. They've pretty much set up everything, and whenever they want, they have different ways they could do it. I mean, they could collapse the economy, they could do different things, they could go to war, they could do all kinds of stuff. There's many different ways they've done it. They pretty much like set up their
There's been a massive chess game going on, and we just started playing.
Yeah, but it's pretty much up to us now. We have to go educate people, and like I was talking with my buddy here yesterday, there's different forms of enlightenment, there's different steps of enlightenment. And one thing, our job is to figure out what step of enlightenment people are at and what step you need to show them. I mean, you can't just jump at somebody who's never heard of anything and jump with Metatron's cube. They'll be like, well, you're crazy. You can't jump at them with sacred geometry. You have to jump at them with maybe like, okay, well, you're interested in health. Okay, now let's take it to maybe a little bit of religion. All right, now let's take it step, 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 step. So we have to build a stepping stone, or like a stair step that you can enlighten people with.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. We got to see where people are at mentally and see what they can swallow. Because if you just step out there and say, we live in fascism, they say, you're crazy, don't talk like that. Yeah. I made a video about a month ago saying, we are living in a fascist country, and I did it with this company I was working for, and after I made it, they're like, you cannot post that on the internet. People will think our company's absolutely crazy. 3 months later, I was like, not so crazy anymore, is it? And they're like, no, it's not that crazy anymore. So we gotta see where people are at so we can give them the information that they can swallow. I guess that's a good place to start.
Just to build on your point, I think too, I think one thing that I appreciate and that a lot of others appreciate is when you listen to what their perspective is. What information are they coming to the table with already, and how can you engage them in that discussion, seeing where they're at.
Definitely.
And letting them to interrogate your own views, you know, taking you to task.
I think
We're listening to a critical discussion on current political situation, if it's fascism or not.
I think as far as growing a movement, which is what we're really talking about, it probably makes the most sense to try to work with people who are already kind of have a clue. Because a lot of us try to convince our niece or our nephew or our aunt or our grandmother, don't you see, fascism is happening? And they're like, not hearing it. But there's a lot of people who are a lot closer. You know, maybe they're not going to be. So then finding those people and finding ways to reach them and actually talk to them about the next level. But where do you guys think?
I think that's
It's a discussion on the critical discussion on fascism and how we should respond.
Like, I was going to work for a company calling people to make, to sell products. And then one thing on the scale was you label how they talk to you, where they're interested, would they ever be interested. So like, you need to basically find where people are at. And that's the first step of knowing where on the scale to put them and where to start enlightening them from, is to find out where they're at. And we should definitely pick the people that are higher up first because they're easier to get.
Build numbers also.
Yeah, build your numbers first, and then as it gets bigger, more people will want to join because they'll see it. And like, it's like a landslide. It'll start slowly, and as you get the people moving, more people will join, and they'll start to see.
Definitely, I agree. I think that when you work with someone who already has an idea, it's easier for them to continue to take that information in and then go and spread it out and, you know, slowly, because it is really important that we get on where the people are, not where we want them to be, because this whole thing does tend to be an emotional thing as well. Like, you go through that, like, denial, like, no, my country can't do that to me, and then you guys are like, oh my god, they are. So you have to be able to understand.
It's a discussion on fascism.
I think
Critical discussion on fascism and how we should respond to what's going on.
What's really important is to think about how can we repair what needs fixing, because
It's hard.
I mean, I have been asking myself this from day one of this movement, what exactly are we fighting for?
Yeah.
And I've been reading up on it, and it's slowly becoming a little clearer, but it's not as easy as just saying, let's eradicate the 1%, you know?
Yeah.
And I think like it's obvious America is a great system on paper, and we need to work at repairing that. I don't think it's about necessarily like Mao's blank slate, where it's like, let's just change everything.
Totally.
Well, that would be the most.
There's a couple
That would be
doctors here
basically
from
the easiest way, because they worked
Northridge.
they worked basically since Hitler's time to build this system up and to get all these chess pieces in place. And we're one move away from checkmate. So if we clear all them out of there, I mean, like, let's say our government. What if we had like every 10 years, everyone's out of government? Or everyone has the opportunity to be out of government. Like, no one should stay in government their whole life, or we should be able to re-elect them. Like, that's not fair, you know? Like, someone's perspectives can change in 10 years, you know? Some guy that we
share
elected
this with
now
the people
for
if you
the
would.
board might change his views and in 10 years be corrupt and we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I
so
agree.
we should have the
that
option
there
to
needs
wipe
to
them
be-
out.
I agree there needs to be some sort of revolutionary, drastic change,
Yeah.
but I don't think that necessarily means starting from square one.
I think that's the only way to do it, because of, like, we have checkmate. There's no moves we can make. We have to do something drastic. We have to, or else there's no other way.
Yeah, I just think that
And it might
that's-
already be too late. I mean, they could declare
Almost
martial law
impossible.
right now. They could go to war with any country they want because they're all tied together. Every country in the world is run by the same exact bankers. Goldman Sachs is in every country.
But that's that whole chess analogy I think is really interesting, because I see these pieces being moved into place.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of who's going to configure them in such a way that it's a fascist, imperialist, like outright sort of thing, or martial law, you know, they're that close to something like that. We've already started to see the early signs of ethnic cleansing in the United States. Places like Arizona, where you pass regulations, you have laws, right? State laws and local ordinances in conjunction with an activist police force, like say Ohio in Arizona, linked to racism, which becomes state sanctioned when people don't step in to stop it, right? And then you have entire communities, like say Mexican American communities, of people just leaving. People leaving Arizona, leaving other states. Well, that's the early stages of an ethnic cleansing, right? So this is where we got this positioning, right? These pieces being moved into place, and those configurations are starting to happen. What's it going to take? Another event, something like 9/11? I don't even think it would take anything as dramatic as 9/11 to really set all this in motion. The executive powers, emergency powers, martial law.
It would take nothing.
Yeah.
And they have 20 options they can choose from. They probably have infinite options we don't even know about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it comes out of the Occupy movement, or it's framed as coming from the Occupy movement.
Yeah, please share. There's going to be a new discussion at 2 o'clock. We have a couple talkers here also on the panel.
Here's the danger, sorry, with the language of the National Defense Authorization Act. We start looking around, we start doing some work, like in 2009, the Department of Defense had it was like a training worksheet or something, and it said something like, which of the 4 answers below would be considered low-level terrorism, and the right answer was protest. So like so we essentially, of course, the American Civil Liberties Union took issue with that, and I don't know where it went, because I haven't been able to follow up on it. But the very fact that that language is there, I think just last week, the police in London, it's another country, it's London, England, if anything is even more fascist than we are. It's the most heavily surveilled state in the world, right? It has a gap between rich and poor that's even worse than here, if you can imagine, I think. And just last week, I think it was last week, the London police comes out and says that the Occupy London is a form of domestic terrorism. Right. So we're just these little steps. And how much further will it be? We know that people are talking about us as terrorists already. And you have the language in place. And the language in the National Defense Authorization Act is you have to be Al-Qaeda or someone who supports them, right? What was George Bush saying? He says, like, if you don't go shopping, then somehow the terrorists have won. Right? Like, I mean, it sounds, it's so okay if we boycott a store, then maybe we're domestic terrorists for economic reasons, right? I mean, it's just a semantic thing, but who's gonna connect those dots? Because we know that people are already doing it, and increasingly publicly they're doing it. The politicians aren't standing up, the Democrats aren't standing up for this, right? And people are just, society is the media is not standing up. And that's what we need. We need upstanders. Right? We have far too many bystanders. Fascism and the Holocaust and all these things. And it sounds radical, right? Sounds crazy, but that was facilitated by bystanders, people who just didn't get out there, didn't say anything, didn't stop it. And people are talking now. Now we need upstanders, and I think that's what we are, or we could be. And we need to train. We need to mobilize an entire army of upstanders.
Know where to move to. What's step 1? Groups like this.
Yeah, right.
And growing it, I think.
And connecting groups like this. Like, I'm not going to go to the one in Sacramento, but I'm sure there's plenty of people in Sacramento who would like to do this,
Well, maybe that's a good, because I think I've been hearing this a lot too.
Maybe through web stuff. But then if they shut down the internet, we're done.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Okay, so how about this?
Is there an ultimate goal that we're going towards, or are we still figuring that out as a movement? And I'm not even sure who to ask that to.
I think that's a great question, because somebody asked me the other day, like, well, what is the Occupy trying to accomplish? And I think just by making it a household name and understanding that they've raised enough awareness to say, oh, corporations are pretty much running our show, I think they've already accomplished something huge.
Right.
And then from there, all right, time for step 2. People have to be on the same page of awareness before you can take a step anywhere.
Exactly.
So what is step 2?
That's the thing.
This.
I think the GAs are every other day.
I'll be right back.